Hello and welcome back to Kevin Can't Play Today. Today we'll be back to our War Thunder Docuseries. Today on our list is the highly underrated and amazing Fiat CR.42 Falco, an Italian plane that had great amount of success over the entirety of the war, far in excess of what it was expected to have. Let's get rid of this and we'll go into the plane itself. So yeah, here's CR.42 Falco. This particular version has two 50 cals uh, in place, so pretty darn good armament for its time when it was put in. Um, and despite being a biplane, it had just an amazing amount of maneuverability, which let it go through the entire war. Uh, the Fiat CR.42 Falco, or in English Falcon, plural of which is Falci, was a single-seat biplane fighter developed and produced by Italian aircraft manufacturer Fiat Aviazione. It served primarily in Italia's Regia Aeronautica both before and during the Second World War. And yeah, let's get into a test flight here. I'll read some while we're waiting. Let's make sure we got. Yeah, we'll switch to those. The CR.42 was an evolutionary design of Fiat's earlier CR.32 fighter, featuring a more powerful supercharged Fiat A74R1C.38 air-cooled radial engine and aerodynamic improvements to its relatively clean exterior surfaces. The aircraft proved to be relatively agile in flight, a factor that has been attributed to its very low wing loading and sometimes decisive tactical advantage. RAF Intelligence praised its exceptional maneuverability, further noting that the plane was immensely strong, although it was technically outclassed by faster, more heavily armed monoplanes. While primarily being used as a fighter, various other roles were adapted for some variants of the type, such as the CR.42N dedicated night fighter model, or the CR.42A as ground attack aircraft, and the CR.42B biposto twin-seat trainer aircraft. And let's get a view of the cockpit here. As you can see, not very complicated. But actually significantly more developed than a lot of earlier biplanes. In terms of instrumentation, it was definitely on par with anything modern. Let's see if we can actually... still need to mess with some of these buttons so we can get a better view. Oh, you can see those from turn. Alright, let's get airborne and keep reading. I think it's gonna collapse now. During May of 1939, the CR.42 entered service with the Regia Aeronautica. It was the last of the Fiat biplane fighters to enter frontline service. By the 10th of June 1940, the date when Italy officially entered the Second World War, roughly 300 of the type had been delivered, which were initially tasked with defending Italy's cities and key military installations. By the end of 1940, the Falco had been involved in combat at various fronts, including the Battle of Britain, the Battle of France, Malta, North Africa, and Greece. By the end of the war, Italian CR.42s had been used on further fronts, including Iraq, the Eastern Front, and the Italian mainland. Yeah, so you see, SR-82, SR-79, like that. That wasn't good. We'll pretend that didn't happen. Just try to get a nice closer look at it. Oh, had to run right into me. Following the signing of the Italian Armistice with the Allies on the 8th of September 1943, the type was primarily regulated to use as a trainer by the Italian co-belligerent Air Force, while some Italian CR-42s were seized by the Germans and used by the Luftwaffe to perform ground attack missions. In addition to its service in Italy, the CR-42 was produced and entered service in smaller numbers with the air forces of several nations, including Belgian, Sweden, yeah, we'll switch the M and the N on those, Belgium, Sweden, and Hungary. By the end of production, in excess of 1,800 CR-42s had been constructed, making it the most numerous Italian aircraft to be used during the Second World War. Aviation author, and I'm going to butcher his first name, Przemysław Skulski, has claimed that the fighter performed at its best during its service with the Hungarian Air Force, specifically during its deployment against Soviet forces on the Eastern Front War, where it reportedly achieved a kill-to-loss ratio of 12 to 1. And we will be getting further into that piece of history here in a bit. We'll make an attack run here. Kidding me? Let's go out. Did I get rid of explosive bullets when I switched them up? That'd be annoying. There it goes. As you can see, the turning ability of this plane is quite impressive, as many RAF pilots found out to their detriment. Alright, on to design and development. During the late 1930s, while a new generation of monoplane fighter aircraft was already being introduced across the various air services of Europe, there was still considerable time before they would be developed and available enough to assume total responsibility for strategic air power operations. Accordingly, by the outbreak of the Second World War during September of 1939, let's go check that out. Many powers still fielded biplanes amongst their air wings, such as the British Gloucester Gladiator and the Italian CR-42. Oh, that must be my plane from earlier, or that bomber. We also knocked down. Yeah, that looks like a bomber. I don't know what's left of it. As such, even as the first flights of the latter were being conducted in 1939, despite an acknowledgement of its effective obsolescence, it was also recognized that such biplanes would likely make a valued contribution in plentiful second-line roles. This pragmatic observation turned out to be correct, as not only would the CR-42 be built in greater numbers than any other Italian fighter of the war, and see action on every front in which the Regia Aeronautica fought upon. The CR-42 is basically an evolution of the design of the earlier Fiat CR.42, which in turn had been derived from the CR-30 series, created in 1932. During the Spanish Civil War of the mid-1930s, the Regia Aeronautica had employed the CR-32 and had reportedly accomplished significant successes using that fighter. Castle right here. Back on the coast. The positive combat experience gave sufficient encouragement to the type's principal manufacturer, Fiat Zone, for the company to produce a proposal for the development of a more advanced derivative of the design, incorporating the newly finalized supercharged Fiat air-cooled radial engine and several other enhancements, such as a supercharger. Key features of the fighter, which was designated as the CR-42, included its relatively clean aerodynamic exterior, very strong structure, and a high level of maneuverability. A combination which had traditionally appealed to Italian pilots, according to the aviation author Gianni Cataneo. According to Cataneo, both the proposal and the concept of a developed biplane was well received by the Regia Aeronautica, having placed a high value on the agility of the platform. Confidence may have been high due to prior wars fought in Ethiopia and Spain, having been fought against relatively disorganized opposition, giving a somewhat deceptive impression of effectiveness. During its formal military evaluation, the prototype CR-42 was tested against the rival Caproni CA-165 biplane fighter and was judged to be the superior design, although the CA-165 was a more modern design which boasted a higher speed, albeit at the cost of maneuverability. During flight tests, it demonstrated its ability to reach a top speed of 272 miles per hour at 17,400 feet and 213 miles per hour at ground level. Climb rate was 1 minute and 25 seconds to 3,200 feet, and of 7 minutes and 20 seconds to 19,700 feet. During late 1939, by which time a major European war already seemed inevitable, the CR-42 was ordered for the Regia Aeronautica. The type had been ordered just as a single element of the larger R plan, under which Italy was to procure 3,000 new fighter aircraft, such as the monoplane Fiat G50 and the Machi C200, both of which are available in War Thunder, to equip and expand its new air services. According to Cataneo, at the outbreak of the Second World War, the CR-42 was considered to be the best biplane in service. Although the age of the biplane was noticeably already coming to a close at this point, a number of other foreign air services expressed considerable interest in the fighter. Once quantity production had been established, a number of early Falcos were delivered to foreign customers, even to the extent of redirecting aircraft originally intended for the delivery to the Regia Aeronautica. These customers included Belgium, Hungary, and Sweden. And we'll be covering a little bit of its history in Belgium and Hungary in a bit, as that's pretty interesting. Soon after its introduction to service, Fiat developed a number of variants of the type. The CR-42 Bis and the CR-42 Ter featured increased firepower, which I believe this is one of those models with the twin 50 calibers. While the CR-42N was a dedicated night fighter model. The CR-42AS was optimized for performing ground attack missions, including bomb racks under the wings. And the CR-42B Biposto commonly served in a twin-seat trainer role. Of these, the Biposto, which was furnished with a longer words are hard. longer fuselage than other models to enable a second seat to be placed in tandem with the pilot. Became the most extensively modified of all the CR.42 variants. In addition, various experimental configurations of the CR.42 was both studied and constructed for trial purposes. These include the ICR.42, I standing for idrovolante, which is seaplane in Italian, and the re-engined CR.42DB. Beginning in 1938, Fiat had worked on the ICR.42, then gave the task to complete the project to C Massa factory in Marina di Pisa on the Tirreno seacoast. The only prototype of which was built in 1940. Tests started in the beginning of 1941 at Vigna di Valle base on Lake Bracciano, north of Rome. Is this a volcano? Check this out. I don't think I've ever flown around here before. It's a little volcano with a house very close to the top there. Yeah, welcome to Sicily. Go check out these now. 523. Unfortunately, the CR.42 with its floats was performed very poorly, with a loss of both speed and its vaunted maneuverability. The CR.42DB was an attempt to improve the type's performance by installing a Daimler-Benz DB601 V12 engine of a 1,000. Oh, can't go that far. Of 1,010 horsepower. This prototype was flown by test pilot Valentino Cas in March of 1941 over Guidonia Monticello near Rome. During test flights, it demonstrated its ability to attain a top speed of 323 miles per hour, as well as having a maximum ceiling of 34,777 feet and a range of 780 miles. The project was cancelled as the biplane configuration did not offer any advantages over contemporary monoplane fighter design. Although this variant never went into production, to the present day, the CR.42DB has continued to hold the distinction of being the very fastest biplane to have ever flown. One of the things marking this series and its place in history, and it is an important piece of that history. Historians are still not certain exactly how many CR.42s were manufactured. The most likely estimate is thought to be around 1,819 aircraft in total, including the 63 CR.42LWs, or Luftwaffe, which 51, according to some sources, which were produced under Luftwaffe control, and a further 140 fighters that were produced for various export customers for the type. Let's do a little bit of aerodynamics here. Aeronautics here. Got a little fun. Get a little close. Go low. Unfortunately, there aren't any bridges in Sicily, apparently. So we can't do any of our patented, on the bridge and through the bridge attempts. But we can do some 3-type patterns to these seamounts. So back towards the direction of the airfield. Overall, the this Fiat CR.42 was a robust and relatively clean single-seat biplane fighter aircraft. In spite of the biplane configuration of the aircraft, it was a modern, quote-unquote, sleek-looking design based around a strong steel and alloy structure. The CR.42 was furnished with fixed main landing gear, legs of which were attached to the underside of the lower wing stubs. Both leg wheels were enclosed within streamlined fairings for aerodynamic reasons. The upper wing was larger than its lower wing, a configuration known as the sesquiplane. The aircraft proved to be an exceptionally agile in flight, characteristic which had been attributed to be the result of the fighter's very low wing loading. The very strong structure of the fighter enabled pilots to perform virtually all maneuvers. Shortcomings of the CR.42 included its slower speed in comparison to monoplanes and a lack of both armor and radio equipment. The CR.42 was typically powered by a single supercharged Fiat air-cooled radial engine, which, via gearing apparatus, drove a metal 3-blade Fiat Hamilton standard 3D.41-1 propeller of 9 feet 6 inches in diameter. Split S there. Did that all pretty quick. During the aircraft's development, particular attention was paid to the design of the NACA cowling, which accommodated the engine. The cowling featured a series of adjustable flaps for cooling purposes. The engine bay incorporated those flaps there. Can't see them too well, but they are there. You can kind of see them towards the back of the engine fairing, above the exhausts. The cowling featured a series of adjustable flaps. Just read that. The engine bay incorporated a fire extinguisher to be used in the event of a fire, which was actually really uncommon back when this plane was in development. So that's pretty cool, especially for a biplane. I don't know of another one that actually had fire extinguishers in the engine. In terms of armament, the CR.42 was commonly outfitted with a single 7.7mm or .303 caliber and one 12.7mm or .50 caliber Renisifat machine gun, which was installed in the decking of the upper fuselage and directly fired through the propeller. As per Italian tradition, a counter for the rounds fired was present amongst the cockpit's instrumentation. The fuselage of the CR.42 was composed of a welded steel tube triangulated framework, built of light alloy formers, while the forward fuselage was covered by metal paneling. Fabric covered the exterior rear of the cockpit. The rigid braced wings used a structure that was constructed mainly of light duralumin alloys and steel. The leading edge was metal skinned, while the rest of the wing exterior was covered by fabric. The upper wing, which was the only one to be furnished with ailerons, was joined in the center and supported above the fuselage by an inverted V-shaped cabane, while the lower wings were directly attached onto the longerons within the base of the fuselage. The tail unit used a cantilever arrangement composed of a duralumin framework and fabric covering. The Fiat CR.42 was a robust. Wait. Apparently, I accidentally. Don't do that. Oh yeah, I was trying to move it. I'm not very good at computers. Oh shoot. There we go. It's a tank, so we're probably not going to do anything to it. barely ahead. We would need, at least some small bombs to take out that little thing. Alright, as part of its operational history, during its service to the Regio Aeronautica, the Italian Air Force, during May of 1939, the Fiat CR.42 entered operational service with the Regio Aeronautica. The 53rd Stormo, based at Turin-Caselle Airport, was the first unit to be equipped with the type, likely because it was pretty much right next to the factory. On the 10th of June 1940, the date on which Italy officially entered the Second World War on the side of Germany, roughly 300 aircraft had been delivered. Italy had delayed its entry into the war in order to better prepare itself for combat. Through the period commonly known as the Phony War, the Regia Aeronautica activated many new squadrons and did all that was possible to speed up aircraft deliveries, including the CR.42. Accordingly, further orders for the type was placed as part of this expansion effort. And it was called the Phony War largely because everybody knew Italy was coming. They knew that they were an Axis power and were allied with Germany and would be entering the war any time. But all the other countries, because they hadn't officially declared war, overlooked them at the time. Though they did, they knew they were coming. Upon Italy's official entry into the conflict, Falco was primarily tasked with defense of Italy's cities and military installations alike, such as Regia Aeronautica air bases and Regia Marina, or the Italian Royal Navy bases. To some extent, it continued to be used in this capacity right up until the signing of the Italian Armistice with the Allies. By 8th of September 1943, the day on which Italy formally surrendered to the Allies, only 60 of these aircraft were still in a flyable condition. And that doesn't actually include the trainers, that's just the fighters. On numerous occasions, the Falco was engaged in dogfights against the British Gloucester Gladiator, another biplane fighter, which I will be covering at some point, probably relatively soon. It's an amazing aircraft with its own great history, and also very overlooked, like the CR.42. And they engaged it over Malta, and later against British Hawker Hurricane monoplanes, sometimes resulting in unexpected successes. The maneuverability of the Falco was an aspect of particular concern to the RAF pilots that faced them. Aviation author Haining observed that a RAF intelligence report in late October of 1940 circulated to all pilots and their squadrons, with copies to Prime Minister Winston Churchill and War Cabinet declaring, quote, the maneuverability of the CR.42s, in particular their capacity to execute an extremely tight half roll, like so, has caused considerable surprise to other pilots and undoubtedly saved many Italian fighters from destruction. End quote. On to Malta. Over the skies of Malta, the CR.42 encountered British hurricanes for the first time on the 3rd of July, 1940. That day, flying offshore waters had shot down an SM-79 bomber 5 miles off of Oh, we ran out of fuel. Let's see if we can make it back to base. I forgot to look at our fuel gauge. Gonna dive here to maintain some airspeed. Always check your fuel gauge. It's a good lesson for everybody. Not checking your fuel gauge means you crash and die. Thankfully, we have a very low stall speed. I wonder if I can shortcut. No, better not shortcut. Okay, and here's where we might crash and die. We do not have enough speed built up. Yeah, we didn't die. Alright. Hey, we made it back without dying, even though I'm an idiot. And I forgot to check the fuel gauge. Anyway, where were we? Flying Officer Water shot down an SM-79 bomber 5 miles off of Califrana, but was soon attacked and turned by the escorting Falchi, who badly shot up his aircraft. Waters crashed on landing, and his Hurricane was written off. The Hurricane pilots soon discovered that the Italian biplanes could often outmaneuver their aircraft, and this was a crucial factor in any dogfight against them. Nevertheless, Cataneo noted that the Hurricane gradually proved itself to be superior of the CR.42. Let's keep taking off again. Refueled. Pilot Officer Jock Barber remembered, quote, "On my first combat, the 9th of July, I attacked the leader of a squadrilla of Falcos, while Flight Lieutenant George Burgess attacked an SM-79 bomber. When I shot down the CR-42 at a range of 100 yards, he did a flick roll and went spiraling down. I found myself engaged in a dogfight with the remaining CR-42s. This went down to about 10,000 feet. By then I had used up all my ammunition without much success, although I am convinced I got quite a few strikes on their leader in the initial combat. I realized pretty quickly that dogfighting with biplanes was just not on. They were so maneuverable it was very difficult to get in a shot, and I had to keep diving and turning to keep myself from being shot down. George had by this time disappeared, so I stuck my nose down and with full throttle was very thankful to get out of the way." End quote. A week later, a dozen CR-42s from the 23rd Grupo appeared in the sky over Malta for reconnaissance. Flight Lieutenants Peter Keeble and Burgess scrambled to intercept them, and the resulting action greatly impressed the Malta defenders with the CR-42's maneuvering capability. Keeble attacked one CR-42, probably the aircraft flown by Sottotenente Mario Benedetti of the 74th Squadrilla that crashed, killing its pilot, and then came under attack himself by the Falchi of Tenente Mario Pina and Tenente Oscar Bello. Keebler tried to dogfight with the Italians, but his engine was hit and his Hurricane dived into the ground at Wide El Gajan near Fort Ranella and blew up. He was the first pilot to be killed in action at Malta. This was the first recorded air victory of the Second World War of the CR-42s against the Hurricane. Shortly after Keeble's loss, a meeting of all the pilots and senior staff was called to discuss the best way of countering the agile CR-42. A suggestion was made that the Hurricane should put down a bit of flaps, as this might enable it to turn with the CR-42. But the only realistic proposal was to climb above these aircraft to be in an advantageous position. And even with combat flaps, the CR-42 can still outturn a Hurricane when pressed. In terms of night fighter operations, the CR-42 served as the main night fighter of the Regia Aeronautica, even if it was not equipped with radar and often lacked even basic radio equipment. As the war went on, the type had been superseded in the day fighter role by more advanced aircraft, but found a renewed niche performing the night fighter mission. The first night interception was performed on the night of 13th and 14th of August 1941 by Capitano Giorgio Graffer, when he located and opened fire on a British Whitley bomber that had been sent to attack the turret. When his guns jammed, Graffer rammed the bomber before bailing out. The bomber had been badly damaged and subsequently crashed into the English Channel while attempting to return back to its base. That's got to take some guts right there to purposefully slam your plane into another plane in the middle of the night. And to bail out and survive the attack is also pretty incredible. One of the most successful night interceptions took place on the night of the 25th of August 1942. That day, in an attempt to oppose RAF night intruding missions that were hammering Italian airfields, the 4th Stormo borrowed 4 radio-equipped CR-42s used by the 208th and 238th Squadrille of the 101st Group of Bombardamento Tufo, based at Abar-Namier, to use them as night interceptors. According to Cataneo, the CR-42 had achieved a degree of success as a night fighter, proving itself to be effective against RAF bombers that were bombing industrial targets throughout northern Italy during 1942. Another little piece of their history was their involvement in the Battle of Britain. On the 11th and 23rd of November 1940, multiple CR-42s flew 2 raids against Great Britain as part of the Corpo Aereo Italiano, which was their contribution to the Battle of Britain as an ally of Germany. Luftwaffe aircraft frequently experienced difficulties in maintaining formation flight with the slower biplanes. Even though slower, with an open cockpit, no radio, and armed with only a pair of machine guns, in this case the 50 cal and a 303 Beretta Safats, the Falchi could easily outturn the Hurricanes and Spitfires opposing it, and usually proved difficult to hit. The CR-42 turned to fight using all of the aeroplane's maneuverability. The pilot could get on my tail in a single turn, so tightly was he able to pull around. End quote. Additionally, as the RAF intelligence report stated, the Falchi were hard targets. Quote, as I fired, he half-rolled very tightly, and I was completely unable to hold him. So rapid were his maneuvers. I attacked 2 or 3 more, and fired short bursts. In each case, the enemy half-rolled very tightly and easily, and completely outturned me. In 2 cases, as they came out of their rolls, they were able to turn in almost on my tail, and open fire on me. End quote. Against British monoplanes, the CR-42 was not always outclassed. One Italian pilot's account is as followed. Quote, I engaged one of the British fighters from a range of between 40 to 50 meters. Then I saw a Spitfire which was chasing another CR-42, and I got in a shot at a range of 150 meters. I realized that in a maneuvered flight, the CR-42 could win or survive against Hurricanes and Spitfires, though we had to be careful of the sweep from behind. In my opinion, the English 303 bullet was not very effective. Italian aircraft received many hits which did no material damage, and one pilot even found that his parachute pack had stopped a bullet. During the winter of 1940 and 1941, the CR-42s were transferred back to the Mediterranean theater. In East Africa, where they had a bunch of success, while flying the Falco in the Africa Orientale Italiana, which was their East African group. Mario Vistini, Visentini, don't want to disrespect the man, became the top biplane fighter ace of the Second World War, having achieved 16 kills. And Luigi Baron and Aroldo Safridi became the second and third Fiat CR-42's top scoring aces, having made 12 and 8 victories, respectively. Moreover, during that short and difficult campaign, the Fiat fighters were responsible for the destruction of a large number of RAF and Southern African Air Force, or SAAF, aircraft, both in the air and on the ground, including a number of Hurricanes. During 1940, 3 squadrilles stationed in Italian East Africa, Ethiopia, Italian Eritrea, and Italian Somaliland, now known as Somalia, were equipped with CR-42s. The 412th, most experienced squadrilla, was based in Kura, along with the 414th Squadrilla, and in Massawa. The 413th Squadrilla was in Assab. Got a little closer. I wasn't quite paying attention. focusing on pronunciation. Fighting there began in July of 1940 and lasted until the autumn of 1941. June of 1940. The Italians met mostly British bombers and reconnaissance aircraft, destroying many of them. On the 12th of June 1940, the 412th Squadriglia attacked 9 Vickers Wellesley bombers from the 47th Squadron above Asmara, and Tenente Carlo Canella claimed the first CR-42 victory in East Africa, a Wellesley that was heavily damaged and forced to crash land. 2 days later, the 412th Squadriglia again intercepted a pair of Wellesleys, this time from the 14th Squadron, that were trying to bomb Massawa. Tenente Mario Vicentini, for his first of his 16 air kills in East Africa, shot down the Wellesley flown by pilot Officer Plunkett. Dogfights usually occurred when enemy airfields were being attacked. Fierce air battles took place at the beginning of November 1940 during the British offensive against the Italian forts of Galabat and Metema along the Sudan border. The Regia Aeronautica was dominant in these fights, sometimes even against more powerful opponents. The most successful day was on the 6th of November, when the CR-42s achieved 7 confirmed kills against the Gladiators for no losses of their own. In the air duels fought during 1940, losses, however, were also suffered. At least 6 Fiats were destroyed and about a dozen damaged. Operations involving the CR-42 were typically hampered by wider logistical issues. The Royal Navy had prevented Italian supplies reaching the East Africa theater, and aerial transportation alone proved to be insufficient. Over in North Africa, it was on the North African front that the CR-42 was most extensively used. At the beginning of the war in Italian North Africa, there were 127 CR-42s from the 13th Gruppo at Castle Benito, and from the 10th and 9th Gruppo of 4th Stormo in Benina, including reserve aircraft. According to some historians, it was the North African theater that the CR-42 performed at its best. Experienced Italian pilots, the majority of them being veterans of the Spanish Civil War, employed the exceptional maneuverability of the CR-42 to great effect, enabling successful attacks against RAF Gladiators, Hurricanes, and Spitfires, and often forcing opponents to, quote, adopt the tactic the Messerschmitt pilots had used against them, to avoid dogfights and to attack them with sudden dives. Initially, the Falco was pitted against the contemporary Gloucester Gladiator and the Hawker Hart, the later being operated by the South African Air Forces, which were biplanes, as well as the Bristol Blenheim fast bombers of the RAF, which was actually a really good plane. Opposing which they were able to achieve a measurable level of success. For example, on the 29th of June, a group of CR-42s from the 2nd Stormo scrambled to intercept an inbound formation of Blenheims, estimating as a total of 9 aircraft that were in the process of bombing the airfield of Tobruk. During the ensuing engagement, the Italian pilots claimed to have shot down 6 of the British bombers, probably from the numbered 113th Squadron, which that day reported as having lost 3 aircraft. The Gladiator was viewed as being superior to the Fiat in regards to its combat equipment. The 50 caliber Beretta Fiat could fire an effective explosive bullet, but the Gladiator's Brownings were able to shoot 2.5 more rounds per second than the synchronized Italian machine guns. However, the CR-42 was capable of superior performance, and was much faster at about 3,000 feet, thanks to its smaller wing area, constant speed propeller, and the superior power of the engine, which could provide up to 960 horsepower for short periods when redlined. The overall exchange ratio between the CR-42 and the Gladiator is difficult to assess, but historian Håkan Gustafsson rated the Gladiator with an advantage of about 1.5 to 1, even though losses are more heavily in the CR-41's than 42's favor. They are all very closely matched. The biggest advantage the Gladiator has is it has 4 machine guns to the Fiat's 2, and has an enclosed cockpit and a radio. But in terms of maneuverability and flat-out speed, the 42 wins every single time in the hands of a capable pilot. Eventually, on the 31st of October 1940, the Falchis scored their first confirmed air victories in North Africa against the Hungarian. During the air battle over Mursa Matra, Sergente Maggiore David Colautti, I probably read that completely wrong and I apologize, and Sergente Mario Turci from the 368th Squadriglia, while escorting SM-79 bombers, which is what I crashed into back there at the beginning of the video, shot down Hurricanes of the 33rd Squadron that were flown by a 26-year-old Canadian flying officer, Edmund Kidder-LeVay, who was forced to bail out, but was killed when his parachute failed to deploy completely. Always pack your own parachute, and make sure it's done right. And Flying Officer Perry St. Quentin, who made a forced landing at Kasaba with a whole fuel tank. Notwithstanding these successes, it became increasingly evident that the CR-42 was unable to operate effectively against more modern monoplanes, of which increasingly larger numbers were being fielded. Over time, the type was able to rely only on its considerable maneuverability and the Regia Aeronautica piloting skills as potential advantages against opponents. Italian losses were, however, stemmed when more advanced Mach-E C-200 and Messerschmitt Bf-109 and Messerschmitt Bf-110 of Luftwaffe 4 arrived in theater during April of 1941, all of which are flyable in this game, by the way. The CR-42s were progressively relegated to performing ground attack operations instead, leaving interception duties to more capable monoplanes. Its service in the Royal Hungarian Air Force is quite interesting. The first foreign purchaser of the CR-42 was the Royal Hungarian Air Force, or known to them as the MKHL, which placed orders for 52 aircraft during mid-1938. The Hungarians, while aware that the CR-42 was conceptually outdated in comparison to the newer generation of monoplanes, had considered the rapid re-equipment of their fighter component to be of vital importance. Additionally, the Italian government had expressed its willingness to forego CR-42 delivery positions in order to expedite the re-equipment of Hungarian units. By the end of 1939, a total of 17 CR-42s had been delivered to Hungary, where they were promptly issued to the 1st Fighter Wing, which began conversion from the earlier CR-32. Its 2 groups of 2 squadrons received their full complement of fighters during mid-1940. Some of the CR-42s in the Hungarian services were armed with a single 50 caliber Gebauer GKM machine gun, 1940 M, and these were fixed twin barrel guns that were driven via the crankshaft of the aircraft's engine, thereby being pretty much the equivalent of this particular variant's armament, having 2 50 cals. In total, the MKHL ordered 70 CR-42s, but through a barter, which included the exchange of a captured Yugoslavian Savoia Marchetti SM-79, they received an additional 2 CR-42s during 1941. The Hungarian CR-42s were first used in combat against neighboring Yugoslavia during April of 1941. During the short conflict in the Balkans, the MKHL reportedly lost 2 of their CR-42s. In mid-June, CR-42 fighters equipped several MKHL units on the 27th of June 1941 when Hungary declared war against the Soviet Union. On that same day, Hungarian CR-42s received their first baptism of fire when the 2-3 squadron escorted bomber formations against Stanislaw, today known as Ivano-Frankivsk, in the Ukraine. Ensign Laszlo Kazar was hit by Soviet anti-aircraft fire while strafing, leading to his crash landing behind enemy lines. On the same day, Sergeant Arpad Kurtets from the same unit claimed the first victory, shooting down a Soviet reconnaissance plane. The 2-3 squadron flew many sorties until the middle of July, escorting bombers and strafing enemy airfields. They claimed 6 additional kills, losing a single aircraft on the 12th of July when Second Lieutenant, and forgive me if I butcher this, Kyoto Vamos collided in a dogfight with a Polikarpov I-16 and bailed out. However, he survived. On the 11th of August, Hungarian Fiats escorted 6 Caproni CA-135s, commanded by Senior Lieutenant Zatkanye, I believe, on their way to bomb a 6,560-foot bridge across the southern Bug River in the city of Nikolaev on the Black Sea. It's a big frickin' bridge. Just saying. On the way back, the Capronis were intercepted by a flight of Soviet Polikarpov I-16 fighters. The escorting Hungarian CR-42 shot down 5 of the I-16s, while sustaining no losses of their own, which is pretty impressive. The I-16 is another very maneuverable and quite heavily armed plane. After the German 11th Army captured Nikolaev on the 16th of August, commander of Luftflotte 4, Colonel General Lohr, decorated the successful Hungarian crews at Sutiska, where I believe they were based. The Hungarian CR-42s were later used in the ground attack role against Soviet forces until December of 1941. Although typically outclassed by more modern types, the Hungarian CR-42s scored 25 destroyed, 1 probable, 1 damaged, and 1 aircraft destroyed on the ground, losing only 2 planes to Soviet fighters. That's damned impressive. For a time, the surviving CR-42s were relegated to training roles. During the spring of 1944, a night assault CR-42 squadron was formed. These aircraft were equipped with flame dampers and bomb racks for the carriage of 4 50-kilo bombs. However, these planes were reportedly not used operationally. The majority of Hungary's CR-42s were lost in training accidents and strafing attacks by U.S. aircraft during 1944. It is believed that a single Hungarian Falco survived the war, but I couldn't track it down. So that's questionable. Its service in the Belgian Air Force, also rather interesting, as it was facing off against its URSAD's ally and Germans. So an Italian airplane flying against the Germans early in the war. The Fiat CR-42s were first to be flooded in Belgium as well. After their initial encounters with the vastly superior Messerschmitt Bf-109 of the Luftwaffe, the entire contingent of Fiats was quickly overwhelmed, although the Belgian pilots fought with great skill. The Belgian CR-42s fought from the first day of the invasion, when they attacked a formation of attacking J-52s in the Tongeren area, forcing one to crash land near Maastricht. The Fiats were then jumped by the escorting Bf-109 fighters, but thanks to their superior agility, managed to safely return to base. That day, the Belgian pilots claimed to have downed a further 4 German aircraft, 3 Do-17 bombers, and a single Bf-109, while the Stukas of IST-2 destroyed no less than 14 CR-42s on the ground at Brumstead Airfield. In the total of 35 missions flown, the CR-42s downed at least 5 and probably even 8 enemy aircraft, including a Do-17, a Junkers Ju-52, and the vaunted Bf-109, for a loss of 2 of their own in the air. The only 2 confirmed Bf-109E loss... Oh, am I out of fuel again? Dang it. We are probably not going to get back to base. So let's just bail. I gotta keep an eye on the fuel. This is a long video. Where were we? The only 2 confirmed Bf-109 losses were scored by Charles Goffin. After capitulation, the 5 surviving Fiat CR-42s were brought into a French Air Force depot in I'm going to mispronounce this. Frejorque? I don't know, somewhere French name. Where they were later found by the Germans. Their final fate is not known. Probably scrapped. Overall, the total claims made by the Belgian CR-42 pilots were 8 Do-17s, 4 Bf-109s, and a single Ju-52. And then here's an interesting little bit of tidbit towards the end of the war. The last claimed biplane kill in history. On the 8th of February 1945, 10 Luftwaffe CR-42 LWs, or Luftwaffe, took off from their base in Gorka, Croatia, to strafe the airfield at Grabovica, used by partisan forces. But at the last moment, they were diverted to attack partisans southwest of Sisak, during which they were attacked by a flight of American P-38 Lightnings of the 14th Fighter Group. Now that would be terrifying, as the P-38 was an excellent aircraft by anyone's standards. So you got guys with a 303 and a 50 cal against a plane that's much faster, more powerful, with twin engines, a 20mm cannon, and 4 Browning 50 caliber machine guns, which, as we know from talking about the Gladiators, fire at 2.5 times as fast. So it's no surprise that the American fighters shot down 3 Fiat biplanes, but then curiously, 2 of the P-38s did not return to base. One of them was actually claimed by a German pilot, but this kill was not confirmed, as these planes typically did not have gun cams. According to authors Håkan Gustav and historians Håkan Gustafsson and Ludovico Slongo, the unidentified German pilot's claim is the last known claimed victory of a biplane to occur. However, there is a level of doubt regarding this claimed outcome. The 2 aircraft which failed to return to base were reported as lost to ground fire by the Americans, but no proof of either claim exists. As I said, the CR-42 didn't typically have a gun cam, so it was harder to confirm the kills, especially in a big furball. You had to have, I believe, 2 other pilots witness the kill to confirm it. And then there's just a chance that they might have been too embarrassed to admit that they lost a P-38 freaking Lightning, an extremely advanced, powerful fighter, to a biplane. I mean, seriously, if you were in that squadron, would you really want to report that? One of the most advanced fighters of its time gets shot down by one of the least advanced fighters still active in the war. So it's an interesting story. We don't know if it's true or not, but at the very least, it is definitely the last claimed kill by a biplane in the history of mankind. So that alone kind of earns its spot in history, as well as being the largest production aircraft in World War II for Italy. What we knew about surviving aircraft, tail number MM5701, an Italian CR.42, is on static display at the Royal Air Force Museum in London. Excuse me, that's complex. Complicated. Royal Air Force Museum, London, in London. Apparently there's more than one Royal Air Force Museum. This was captured on the 11th of November 1940 during the Battle of Britain, when it suffered an overheated engine and was forced to land on the shingled beach at Orfordness, Suffolk. During the summer of 1941, it was flown by the Air Fighting Development Unit in mock combat against a variety of British fighters. At the end of 1943, all testing was complete, and the aircraft was marked for preservation in a future museum as a result of an earlier request by the Air Historical Branch, which was very prescient of them. And a lot of the Brits actually really admired this plane for its ability, and some of them equally hated it. It was subsequently stored at several RAF facilities until 1978, when it was moved to its present home at the RAF Museum. As far as I know, with a little bit of work, it is actually operational and flyable. However, it's been sitting unfueled and unoiled for a long time, so it probably takes some effort to actually get it flyable, but it is possible. It's still in great condition. Tail number 2542, which was a Swedish Swedish J11, which was their designation for it. It is under restoration at airworthiness at the fighter collection in Duxford, Cambridgeshire. The aircraft was lost, and the pilot, Bertil Klintman, killed in a controlled flight into terrain accident on the 13th of April 1942 in Kiruna municipality in the north of Sweden. The aircraft was one of 7 flying in an exercise at very low level over snow-covered mountainous terrain in conditions that made judging height difficult. The body of the pilot was quickly recovered, but the aircraft remained at the crash site until it was recovered many years later, 41 years in fact, in 1983. It is not under operation yet. They're still working on it. Tail number 2543, another Swedish J11, is on static display at the Swedish Air Force Museum in, I'm going to mispronounce this, Linköping, Östergötland. Again, like the one in London, it's in theoretically operational shape and flyable. However, it hasn't been flown in a very long time. Another one in reconstruction is an Italian CR.42 on static display at the Italian Air Force Museum in Bracciano, Lazio. It is made up of 60% original parts to the original airframe. It is in Italian colors and marked as MM4653, though I wasn't able to tell if this is a new designation number or the original tail number. And is in fact a composite built up with the help of parts recovered in Sweden, Italy, and France. In theory, this also might be the surviving Hungarian one. I'm not sure. It is currently painted and labeled as an Italian plane, however. So anyway, that is the little plane that could, the CR.42. Which I find highly fun to play with, especially in early game matches. It is far superior to many of the pretty much all of the other nations' biplanes, not only because of armaments, having that 50 cal mounted, but in terms of just sheer speed and maneuverability, climb speed, it just pretty much kicks everything's butt. And is still surprisingly effective against pretty much everything in the air in the early war period. You can't discount this plane at all, otherwise you are probably going to die. So if you see a CR.42 in the skies with you, if you're playing the game, yeah, watch out. Don't underestimate it. Many British pilots underestimated this plane, and even a few German pilots underestimated this plane, much to their detriment. We'll go back to the hangar. And thank you for joining me. I'll be trying to post some gameplay footage of this plane a little bit later after a bit of a break. So you can see how well I use it, which is not very. Thankfully the plane is amazing, so it helps me win anyway, and get kills. And we'll be looking at a few of the other planes that I've got on the lineup with it if I get shot down. So yeah, stay tuned for another video for the gameplay footage, and thank you for joining me for yet another documentary. And I will see you all soon. Last week was kind of messed up, and I ended up sleeping through an entire day and not realizing what day it was, so I didn't get as much content out as I would like, but I've got a few new games to kind of show off to you guys, and we'll be trying to do that this week. So anyway, stay tuned, and I'll see you later. If I can get